For record-keeping purposes, if you wish to make a statement regarding any item on the agenda, please complete the form located at the entrance or at the rear of the council chambers and deposit it with the Planning and Housing Commission Secretary. And everyone, welcome here to tonight's Planning and Housing Commission meeting. Vice Chair Vernon will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Persons wishing to address the Planning and Housing Commission are requested to state their name for the record. This portion of the agenda is intended for public comment. State law prohibits the Planning and Housing Commission from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. The Planning and Housing Commission will appreciate your cooperation in keeping your comments brief. Please observe a 3-minute limit to communications. Ms. Capilla, did we receive any speaker cards or written comments from the public for any items not on the agenda?
No, Chair, we did not receive any speaker cards nor written comments.
All right, very good. Next item, we will be considering approval of the meeting minutes for our last meeting, September 11th, 2023. Ms. Capilla, did we receive any speaker cards or written comments from the public regarding the minutes from the last meeting?
No, Chair, we did not.
All right. Do we have any motion to consider at this time?
I motion for approval of the meeting minutes, September 3rd, or September 11th.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Sequeland and seconded by Commissioner Alexander. Let's please vote. All right, the motion passes 4-0. All right, next we have a public hearing, which are items that have been publicly advertised for review and consideration by the public or by the Planning and Housing Commission. We have 2 public hearings tonight. The first public hearing item is for HRLM 2023-0001. This is an application to delete a residential structure at 420 South Bell Avenue from the city's heritage inventory, as the structure was damaged by fire and no longer satisfies the listing criteria stated in the Corona Municipal Code, section 17.63.090B. Applicant is Reynaldo Reyes on behalf of Ray Reyes Investment and Acquisitions, LLC. Ms. Choi, Associate Planner, will present this item. Ms. Choi.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize for the delay. HRLM 2023-001 is a request by the property owner to delete the property from the city's heritage inventory list. For background purposes, in 2003, the city established a Corona Heritage Inventory list in recognition of potential resources for preservation because of its age, context in the neighborhood, association with historic event or period of significance to the architectural, engineering, or other attributes that reflect the history of the city. Each structure on the heritage list was given a ranking of high, moderate, or low, depending on the structure's potential to be listed on the city's register of historic resources, which would then designate the property as a historic landmark. The project site is an interior lot located along the west side of Bell Avenue, west of Main Street, between 4th Street and 5th Street. The site was improved with a 2-story residential structure constructed in 1920. The structure was placed on the city's heritage inventory list with a moderate ranking for its architectural quality, which exhibits a street-facing gable roof with exposed rafter, wood siding material all around the building, and a screen-in front porch, which was typical of homes built, constructed in that period. The structure was documented to be in good to fair condition based on visual surveys by city staff in 1983 and in 2002. In May of 2021, the structure suffered fire damage beyond repair and subsequently was ordered to demolish. The property owner is requesting to delete the property from the heritage inventory because the structure no longer represents the architectural quality that merits its placement on the heritage inventory list. The Corona Municipal Code provide the authority to the Planning Commission to remove or reduce the heritage inventory list. Additionally, in order to remove a property from the heritage inventory list, one of the findings has to be made, as stated in subsection 17.63.110E. As noted on the screen in front of you, there are 3 findings that the Planning Commission must make one of the findings in order to remove the property from the heritage list. Based on the record, the fire damaged structure was beyond repair and was subsequently demolished. Therefore, the request to delete the property from the heritage list meets finding number 1 and 3. In conclusion, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission determine that HRLM 2023-001 is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, to approve HRLM 2023-001 to delete the property from the city's heritage inventory list subject to the conditions of approval, and 3, adopt the resolution number 2617 granting the request based on the finding contained in the staff report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, Ms. Choi. Before we open a public hearing, any commissioners have questions for staff? All right, then Ms. Capilla, did we receive any speaker cards or written comments from the public on this item?
No, Chair, we did not.
Okay, I will open the public hearing in case anyone present would like to come to the podium to speak. And with that, no one is coming. We will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for any comments or a motion.
I just wanted to comment, I think it's notable that all 3 organizations within the city that guide the historic properties have all recommended the motion. I think that's pretty notable.
Thank you, Chair. I think it does meet the criteria. Obviously, the structure's no longer there due to the structure fire. However, I do have concerns or questions regarding the replacement structure although we've been advised previously the circle itself, structures within the circle don't belong to a historical district. They're surrounded by historical characteristics, structures, and I was wondering if the applicant was here, perhaps could open the public hearing and ask him a few questions, Chair.
Yeah, I'm open to that if the applicant is here and would like to comment, or is there any information staff can provide on the replacement structure? Do we know anything about that yet?
The staff report had stated that to move forward with the process. Is that started already, or?
Chair and Commissioner, yes, the property owner has submitted a application to city staff to construct a single-family residence on the property, and therefore there is, which triggered this application before you tonight.
And I don't have a problem with that. Good for them for investing in their property and renewing the neighborhood. That's fine. What I thank you for that. I don't have any questions for that, but more comments for my colleagues. I guess my main thing is that I wanted to avoid the scenario where we have a rebuild at 11th and Victoria, which is one opposite end of modern, very modern, compared to houses next door that are possessing many characteristics of historic periods that they were built in. Yes, in various degrees of condition, but that is such a stark difference. I was hoping that we could perhaps ask about what the characteristics, what percent of the new building, the structure, what does the elevation look like? Does it have any historic architectural characteristics at all? That type of thing.
Well, I don't think, or maybe it can be clarified, that that's a requirement for this property. Is there any stipulation that any new structure comply with any heritage-style architecture?
In response to Commissioner Alexander's question, as the commission is making a decision to whether or not remove this structure from the heritage inventory, once that decision is made, the property presumably will no longer be subject to the heritage inventory's design standard and guidelines. However, the property is located within the downtown revitalization specific plan, and within that specific plans, there are residential design guidelines specifically for infill development, in which the future building will be subject to design review in terms of the roof designs, exterior material, and massing of the structure so that it will be compatible with the existing neighborhood.
Thank you for that. Could I ask if you're familiar with the structure that I referred to at 11th and Victoria? Because I believe that falls within the downtown, and it is to staff's review for the architectural process. And
we're familiar with that, and we've recognized that there were some errors on that, so we have already dealt with that. So that was an unfortunate situation.
thank you, Ms. Coletta. Would there be, maybe you could comment in regards to this body, this commission, if we're able to request or put conditions for some type of architectural features?
So as Ms. Choi stated, they're falling within the parameters of the specific plan, and the specific plan and our general residential design guidelines require them to look at the surrounding area. So although this new building may not be historic, we still want it to be compatible, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So they will be looking at that. We've had a couple of infills that, this has been brought up, so staff is making a more cautious approach on that. So they are looking into that to make sure it still fits in with the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you so much. That was all I had. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I have no specific comments. Vice Chair, anything from you? Okay, then we will entertain a motion.
I'll motion for approval of HRLM 2023-0001 as recommended.
Okay, I will second the motion. And then let's please vote. Okay, the motion passes 4-0. Our next public hearing item is for CUPM 2023-0001. This is an application to modify a previous CUP, CUP 17-0004, to revise an originally approved site plan and architectural design for a senior housing development of 62 units on 2.14 acres in the R3 multiple family residential zone. The site is at 159 North Buena Vista Avenue, APN 118-290-049. Applicant is Milad Kejian on behalf of Pierre Saad, the property owner. And we have Ms. Rocio Lopez here tonight, consulting planner, to present the item. Ms. Lopez.
Thank you, Chair Woody. Good evening, Commissioners, members of the audience, and staff. The item before us tonight, as stated by Commissioner Woody, is for a modification to a previously approved conditional use permit, conditional use permit 17-004. The applicant acquired the site a few years back, and the applicant had applied for an application to modify the site plan and the architectural design of the previously approved project. The applicant is also requesting a reduction in the age requirement from age 60 to 55 years. The project also includes on-site improvements with overall new construction, perimeter landscaping, walls, fencing, and of course, on-site parking. The public improvements will include new landscape parkways, sidewalk, curb and gutter, new street lights, as well as a new fire hydrant. The previously approved project consisted of one freestanding building, 3 stories high, at a square footage of approximately 52,086 square feet. The modified project proposes 2 detached 3-story in height buildings with an attached 1-story bungalow behind the rear of Building A. So it's Building A and B, and for an overall square footage of 51,885 square feet. The approved project consisted of 62 senior housing units, and the modified project proposes the same amount of housing units, keeping it at 62. The approved project featured 7,320 square feet of outdoor living space with centralized amenities for the seniors. The applicant's proposing a more active senior lifestyle project that features greater outdoor living space at 10,550 square feet and with amenities evenly distributed between buildings A and B. The landscaping overall square footage is pretty similar, with the previous being 23,306 square feet and the proposed being 23,800 square feet. The previous project was approved at 98 total parking spaces, and the applicant is proposing an additional 12 parking spaces for 110 total. To give the background information, or the Planning Commission some background information, on May 2nd, 2018, the City Council approved the original conditional use permit for the 62-unit senior housing project. And then the first extension of time was authorized or adopted or issued by the Planning Commission on June 2020 for a future expiration of May 2nd, 2022. The Planning Commission last year approved the second extension of time, approving the project through May of 2024. And on May 2nd, 2021, the new owner, which is in the audience tonight, he's the applicant, he applied for modification for that we have before us tonight for the 62-unit senior housing project. The applicant told staff that they did conduct outreach in the fall of 2020, and when the applicant discusses the project, they can elaborate a little bit more on what their outreach efforts were. Here's a view of the subject site. So the subject site is located at 159 North Buena Vista Avenue. To the right of the screen is the 91 freeway. And so the project site is bordered by the 91 freeway to the south, Railroad Street to the north, Vicentia Street to the east of the site, and can't recall the other street to the west. I'm sorry. I think it's Buena Vista. Buena Vista is just to the border to the west. The project site consists of 2.14 acres. The project site is surrounded by apartments to the immediate south, to the immediate east of the site, And to the west of the site, there's a mobile home park just behind a couple of single-family residential structures. The zoning and land use of the project site is HDR, which is the land use. That is high-density residential. The zoning is R3, which is a multiple family residential zone. The project site, excuse me, not the project site, but the site to the immediate south is an existing apartment complex, also zoned R3 with an HDR land use designation. And then around the project site is MDR land uses, which is a medium density residential land use. And there are R2 zones just to the immediate north, as well as to the east of the site. And there is R1 single-family residential zone across the street, as well as to the southeast of the site, with a mobile home park zone designation across the street. This is a view of the previous site plan approval from 2017. As the commission can see, the 52,000 square foot three-story building is located right at the center of the site. There's no covered parking. It's just surface parking all around the perimeter of the site at a rate of 98 parking spaces. The applicant's revised plan shows two detached structures. Building B is to the left of the screen and Building A is to the right. Those two are three-story high buildings, and there's a residential bungalow attached to the back of Building A. The applicant does meet the setback requirements of 25 feet from Buena Vista Avenue, which is the front yard setback, as well as the interior side yard setbacks of 10 feet. Now, the code does require, when it's a multifamily development project, if it's over 1 story in height, when it's adjacent to a single-family zone or R2 zone, it shall have a 50-foot setback to the property line. And so Building B and Building A, both along the interior lot lines as well as the rear lot line, does meet that 50-foot requirement. The parking consists again of 110 parking spaces. There is parking underneath the buildings, as we shall see in the floor plans momentarily. So this is a floor plan of Building A. This is the first and second floors. I apologize, I know it's pretty tight, pretty small to read. But essentially the first floor, which is to the right side where you see the green areas there. The green areas represent some of the open space areas. There is parking underneath the building, and essentially kind of a covered carport type of parking. And there is a 9-hole golf course. Let's see if the pointer works here. Oh, maybe it's not working on the screen. Anyway, it's to the right of the floor plan. It's kind of that blue area to the right of the first floor. There's a nine-hole golf course there for the residents, as well as I believe it's an 18-inch high koi pond. There is a multi-purpose room. There's a mail room for residents. There's a manager's office that's closest to Buena Vista Avenue. And the first floor is consistent of 1 and 2 bedroom units. The second floor, which is to the left of the right floor plan, essentially consists also of 1 to 2 bedroom units. The Building A bungalow is 5 units in total, and the third floor of Building A also features more 1 to 2 bedroom units. Building B consists of the first, or this screen shows the first, second, and third floors of Building B. And Building B consists of further amenities. There's the shuffleboard activities on the first floor. There is covered garages And then, of course, there's covered carport areas as well. There is the trash area in the first floor of Building B as well as Building A in compliance with the code. And the second and third floors of Building B feature also 1 to 2 bedroom units. So the unit mix essentially consists of 1 bedrooms ranging from 530 to approximately 835 square feet. The 2 bedrooms range in size from 720 to approximately 925 square feet. There are 31 one-bedrooms and 31 two-bedrooms altogether. It's for an overall area of 51,885 square feet and a total of 62 units. These are the proposed elevations that the applicant has provided to staff. They are proposing like a shiplap darker brown material to resemble wood siding. And speaking with the developer, staff thought it would be possibly a better idea to have that shiplap replaced with colored stucco to match the adjacent residential structures, more particularly the multifamily project to the south of this particular property. Again, this project features 3-story units. There is parking that's tucked in on the first floor at ground level, and there is the second and third floors are the floors that feature the 1 and 2 bedroom units. Again, this is another view of the elevations from the interior of the site, and the bottom view is just a kind of a perspective bird's eye view of the site. The site it's kind of odd in shape. It's almost shaped kind of like a U shape. So along the southern driveway, it is a 28-foot wide driveway, and it is for ingress and egress, whereas the northern driveway will only be for egress of vehicles only. Staff has routed this project to various departments in the city, including engineering department, development services, public works, fire. All the departments provided input and were in agreement with the overall plan development. This is a view of the colors materials board. So where the shiplap siding currently is, staff has conditioned that this be replaced with a colored stucco material to better match the existing neighborhood. The architecture design is, the original project featured more of a kind of a Spanish Mediterranean design that was a little bit inconsistent with the neighborhood. So this is a more contemporary architectural design that staff feels fits in a little bit better with the neighborhood. There will be light concrete tile roofing, barrel type of design, and again, project features hip roofs in the exterior facades, as well as cornice trim. And the interior of the roof will be a flat roof that will feature solar panels that's consistent with the new building code requirements. These are just the colored, well, not colored elevations, but the Building A west elevations. And if we look at the first design, or the first elevation at the top of the screen, just to make a notation that the previous project, one of the requirements was that the project be graded so that even though it's a 3-story building, it's consistent in height with adjacent southern apartment structure. So the code requires a maximum 40-foot height limitation, and this project features approximately 34.5 to 35.5 foot at its highest point. So the project will be graded approximately 3 to 6 feet in order to make that accommodation. And this is a view of the north elevation of Building A. So the keynote, if you look at to the bottom right of the screen, that shows the position of the elevations looking from the north face Building A. And this is the south and east elevations. Again, the keynote is to the lower right of the screen. And essentially, if you're living in the apartment complex to the south, you'd be looking out your window. You wouldn't necessarily see the bottom floor because of the block wall, because it's reduced in height. So you'd essentially be looking at the second and third windows. And even then, with the added landscaping, perimeter landscaping that's being proposed, you would technically be looking at cypress trees, not necessarily the building. So these are the elevations for the bungalow at the rear of Building A. The bungalow at the rear of Building A is a one-story. It's approximately 15 to 17 feet in height. And the elevations in the middle of the screen are showing what the transition looks like between the 3-story and the 1-story. These are the elevations from Building B, and it's essentially it's the north, south, east, and west elevations. And Building B sits in the center of the property, very similar to what the original approval was. This particular project, staff feels that the applicant has done a pretty nice job with the variety of amenities that this project has. Just to list a few, and it's on page 4 of your staff report, there is a 12-person swim spa area in both buildings A and B. There are outdoor fitness equipments, shuffleboard courtyard, charcoal barbecue areas, picnic tables, tango benches, 9 holes, mini golf course, a giant checkerboard area within Building A, multi-purpose hall within Building A, laundry rooms both within Buildings A and B, and mail and parcel rooms within Building A. So this is just showing the depiction of the various project amenities. And looking at the landscape plan, the applicant is proposing tall trees and shrubs around the perimeter of the site to screen the project site from the adjacent parcels. And again, this is just a sectional views of the proposed screening. So the site or the depiction at the very top shows the 3-story structure to the left of those tall cypress trees, which will be 24-inch box in size. And then it shows the existing apartment complex to the right of that. The view project site, or the proposed 3-story structure to the right, and dense landscaping between the existing developments, as well as the third site shows the proposed Building B to the left, and the single-story structure to the right. And then, of course, the bottom view is a view of the existing structure and the existing development to the left. There's a wall and fence plan that the applicant is proposing, so there will be new perimeter walls where there are no existing walls. Where there are existing masonry walls, the applicant proposes to stucco the interior of those walls, and there will be sliding gates located at both driveway entries, so it will be a gated development. To the south of the entry area or the driveway, there will be a few parking spaces before the gate for guest parking or applicants coming in to inquire about any rentals at this facility. There's a list of development standards that the applicant has to abide by, or certain requirements that have to be met in the R3 zone, which is a multi-family zone. One of those is parking spaces or parking requirements. In this particular case, the project requires 93 parking spaces based on the 2017 approval of 1.5 spaces per unit. The applicant is actually providing 110 parking spaces, which is the 1.5 spaces. And in addition, he is also providing 1 parking space for every 5 units for guest parking. So the parking is in compliance with the code standards. Setbacks require the front yard to be a minimum 25 feet, interior side yards 10 feet, and rear yard to be 10 feet, with the exception if property is adjacent to an R2 or a single-family zoned properties and it's greater than 1 story, then the applicant must provide a 50-foot setback requirement. And this project is in compliance with that setback. Height limitations are 40-foot maximum. The project does comply with a height limitation. On-site landscaping is a 10% minimum. Applicant's providing 25.5% landscaping, which is in compliance. The project for senior housing can have a density of 75 dwelling units per acre, and the applicant is providing 28.97 dwelling units per acre. That's also in compliance. There is a 60% maximum lot coverage within this zone. The applicant is providing 37%, which is also in compliance. The unit size for senior, 1 bedroom is minimum 450 square foot, and the 2 bedroom is 550 square foot. The applicant is providing 530 to 835 square feet for a 1 bedroom and 820 to 925 square feet for a 2 bedroom. This is also in compliance. Outdoor living area, the code requires a minimum 9,300 square feet. Applicant's providing 10,550 square feet in compliance. Private outdoor living space, minimum requirement is 37.5 square feet. Applicant is providing, it meets compliance with 38 to 55 square feet per unit. Enclosed storage area must be 4,800 cubic feet. Applicant's providing 6,635 cubic feet. And then, of course, the trash pickup area, the requirement is 372 square feet. Applicant's providing almost a little under double that size. So that project is also in compliance with the trash pickup area. This is a view of the project site. The project site is located to the left of the screen. It's the vacant parcel there, and this is a southeast view. You can also see the existing 2-story apartment complex that's to the left of this project site. This is a view looking northeast. Again, the existing apartment complex is located to the right of the site. One thing to note is that the applicant will be required to dedicate approximately 4 feet of their property to the city for future road widening. This is a local street that is a 68-foot wide local street per the city's circulation element. Currently in front of the site, it is deficient about 4 feet. So the applicant will be required to widen the front of the site, at least in front of the southern driveway entry. And along the northern driveway entry, the applicant is going to essentially be rebuilding the landscape parkway, curb and gutter, but it will be left at the existing width because of the existing homes that are currently located there. And this is a view of the existing home at 159 North Buena Vista that will be demolished. It's approximately almost an 800 square foot home that is owned by the current applicant. The staff has made positive findings for approval of a conditional use permit. It does comply with the Corona Municipal Code development standards, as we previously observed. And the project is also consistent with the land use designation as well as the zoning designation. It does meet the housing element goals and policies for infill development, as well as balance of housing types, which in this case adds senior housing to this particular area. It is consistent with adjacent multiple family housing types to the north, south, and the east of the site. Staff has, the city council has previously adopted the mitigated negative declaration for this project back in 2018. It was, again, for 62-unit senior housing development. This is consistent with that development project. And therefore, staff, per the CEQA guidelines, has made a consistency finding with the previously adopted mitigated negative declaration. The project maintains the original 62 units, is consistent with the city's housing element in the code. There is actually a reduction of 201 square feet of the previously approved project. There are 12 additional parking spaces being provided on site with this proposed modification. And the applicant's request to reduce the age limit from 60 to 55 years is actually consistent with state law, so staff is in support of his request. The project features a contemporary architectural design that is actually more consistent with existing neighborhood versus the previous Spanish design features. There is adequate perimeter landscaping for this project to adequately screen the project from surrounding residential land uses. And as previously mentioned, the housing units are required to meet city and state mandates with the new RHNA numbers, which is a regional housing needs assessment. Therefore, knowing that the CUP meets the finding requirements, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution 2618 and grant CUP M 2021-0004 based on the findings contained in the staff report and the conditions of approval. And that concludes my presentation, and I understand that the applicant has a video that they'd like to present to the Planning Commission tonight.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Lopez. Very thorough presentation. There's obviously a lot of details on this project and on your staff report, so we appreciate you including that. As far as the video you just mentioned, is that part of your presentation, or is that something we should include in the public hearing then?
We have that ready for you.
Okay. I will wait. Since that seems like that would be part of the public hearing, I first want to see if any of the commissioners have questions for staff.
I do. I have a bunch, but I'll start with a couple and then see if my other commissioners are. On the age change from 60 to 55, does that, I understand what the change is, but how does that change any approvals? Does it change any scope on how we evaluate the application? Or is it just really a reduction in the age to open to more people? What comes with that change, I guess?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the previous approval had a condition requiring an age limit of 60 and above. So I believe the only condition or the only change was to that condition, and we therefore modified the condition from 60 to 55 feet, 55 age limit. But essentially, there's really no change in the design. I mean, pretty much the design features. The previous project was not necessarily a congregate care facility. I mean, this is a kind of market rate senior housing project. So unless, Joanne may want to chime in.
It doesn't change anything. It's still senior housing, so all the development standards that have been applied in the staff report apply to that age limit.
Okay, thank you. The next one was the number of reapplications and extensions. So, and you went over those, so I think I understand those. Is there a maximum number of extensions and reapplications that can be made on an original CUP?
No, that is at the discretion of the commission, which is why those always come back to you.
Okay, so this could potentially be extended again if it were so approved tonight. There could be another extension and potential change in the future.
Yes,
It's
if the
unlimited.
2-year limitation came upon and they had not started with the permit process with us, going through the plan review and the permit process, they could come to this board and ask for an extension of time.
Okay, and I'll do one more and then give way. You mentioned the architectural changes, so I'm assuming that the building change from a single building to 2 plus the bungalow was the applicant, but you mentioned that the city had several recommendations. So those recommendations on themselves, would they have forced the amendment to the COP being required? Or are those just aesthetic changes?
Yeah, just as, those were just aesthetic. You know, while the design is nice, staff felt that the shiplap siding was a little too modern for the area, and so, you know, and I believe the applicant is in agreement that they'd prefer to stucco than have that type of siding.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me now. I have more later.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up actually on a couple points that, or questions that Commissioner Siquelin just brought up. So with the age limit, can you kind of speak to the distinction between the state requirement, the state law versus so the project currently has 60-year limit for residents, and so that was, is that the Corona or the Corona code, or is Corona code 62 years? Did I see that, or?
Yes, so the Corona Municipal Code defines senior citizen, or excuse me, it defines senior citizen as a person of 62 years of age or older. However, the California Civil Code defines the senior citizen development as age 55 years of age or older for senior housing. So I think our definition may need to be amended at some point in time to be consistent.
And then why does it matter, I guess, whether this is designated as senior citizen housing or not? I mean, I understand the limit, but I mean, these are, does the applicant get some sort of benefit by classifying this as a senior housing development?
That's a good question. It might be a good question for the applicant as to why these are not just listed as full, market rate. I'm not sure. I think that's kind of their niche of their development, but yeah.
Chair, I can clarify. Senior development, they get a less restrictive parking ratio compared to regular apartments, compared to non-senior. They also have a less restrictive common open space requirement, so they do get these benefits, and that's why we have to put a deed restriction on the age in order to keep it senior.
All right, thank you. Yes, and that definitely reminds me, or refreshes my memory. I appreciate that. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask about that Commissioner Siquelin brought up was the extension. So maybe Ms. Coletta can clarify, because we were not presented with the extensions, right? Did that go directly to council on for this project?
No, they were presented to the commission, the extension of times. Both of them were.
Further questions by other commissioners?
Good evening. Great presentation. I have some questions that are concerns also. The parking spaces that are allotted, when you've reduced the age, even 60, my concern is that there will not be ample parking. That street is claustrophobic as it is, and I don't think that there will be ample parking on the street for visitors. I'm wondering, how are they allotting for that with just the front that is for prospective residents? After 5 people, if there's anyone holding any type of an event, there's nowhere to walk or to park. How are they addressing that? And the age 55 to meet the state's requirement for seniors, that age, typically, my concern is, what are your requirements for, what will the owners do for seniors who end up having family members that move in and have to move in? Or I mean, what's going to happen with all of that? Because it's going to just bring a lot of people with parking.
This particular project is required to meet the minimum standard in the code, which is, when it was approved in 2017, it was the 1.5 spaces per unit. So the applicant is actually meeting that minimum requirement, plus he is meeting the current code, which is that, and an additional one space for every 5 units. So the code actually requires them to have 106 parking spaces, and the applicant is providing 110 parking spaces. It would be wonderful if the project could provide actually, you know, an overabundance of that, but when staff looks at meeting the criteria of the existing requirements in this particular zone, staff is essentially looking to make sure that they meet the minimum threshold. In this particular case, they do meet that. I would think we could ask the applicant how they propose to, limit parking. Typically, when you have a residential unit, the landlord or the management company will typically assign, 2 parking spaces for that particular unit, whether it be the 1-bedroom or the 2-bedroom. So in this particular case, the applicant has several garages, as well as several carports, as well as several uncovered parking spaces. But essentially, the 1 space for every 5 units, that is the minimum requirement for the guest parking.
So let me correct. So it's actually, he's providing 1 space for every 4. And if you recall, I think it's been maybe almost 2 years, the Planning Commission had done a revision to our parking ordinance. And this was one of the changes that actually the Planning Commission proposed, because our senior housing did not have any guest parking requirement prior to that. It was only 1.5 spaces per unit. And this commission, during the time we were updating the ordinance, recommended that we add 1 space for every 4 units to senior housing just due to the guest parking. So the reality is this project is actually complying with the recently adopted current standard from just about 2 years ago.
Okay,
And is
thank
adding
you.
guest parking.
Thank you. That still doesn't satisfy what we know will be the parking requirement. The second question I have, I didn't see it in the presentation at all, and what is the allotment, what is the, for handicapped? I didn't see elevators, maybe I overlooked that, and will people who may be seniors or may be disabled at some point, what will be the accommodations for that?
Yes, Commissioner Vernon, there is elevator access in both buildings A and B. And the units, essentially, the handicap units will have adequate parking as presented within the site plan. And they are also required to meet handicap accessibility when they go through plan check for the building, through the building department.
Okay.
I had a few more, if I may. The bungalow, it's a pretty creative use of the space, and I have some questions for the applicant later, but does the city look at the bungalow building any different than any other buildings in terms of the ratios or review requirements? Or is that just another building?
The setbacks are actually less for the bungalow because it is a 1-story. So the rear yard setback on the bungalow is 10 feet to the rear, as well as 10-foot side. But essentially, the fire department did look at the access to the bungalows, and they were satisfied with the current layout. There's 5 units proposed in the 1-story bungalow at the rear, but essentially, it's looked at with the overall project.
Okay. And in your presentation, you also mentioned the demolished home, and I'm sorry, I must have missed that when I was reviewing the application earlier. So the demolished home is, could you maybe show that on the site plan?
Yeah, I believe on the site plan, the applicant has it, it's not shown on the site plan, but there is an existing, almost an 800 square foot home that we saw on the street view. And so it's an
Okay.
older home. It's not a historic home by no means.
And was that part of, that's the site of that home, was that part of the original CUP application back in
Yes.
2017?
Correct.
Okay, it was, all right. All right,
That's the second driveway location that they're bringing in.
the south driveway?
Yeah, and I also want to follow up on Commissioner Vernon's question about the age 55 and family members moving in. When you live in an age-restricted community, they cannot have family members move in. It's only the tenant and the tenant's spouse. It's not treated the same as market rate, where you can say, oh, my child needs to come and live with me. It is limited to the age demographic of this community. So it's more regulated than you would on a market rate that's non-age restricted.
I don't know that that's that with, in the age of COVID. I do not know in Corona, but in my experience, 55 communities, if there is someone allowed to, I have personal experience with that, 90-year-old and a 62-year-old, and then the granddaughter had to move in with the children, and one precedent was set for the other. That's just my caution about it, my own personal experience. Even though we have that here, it was allowed during COVID, and those individuals are still all living in those places that are designated 55. I know that in Corona, on Main, we have near the old Vista Cove. That place is very, very tight, but the residents there have been there like 20, 30 years. Nobody's moved, but the new ones that come in, that might be a problem.
Thank you. I had also, that was flagged, so thank you, Commissioner Sicklin, regarding the age limit. If I'm not mistaken, and I do remember this project coming through in 2020 to us, some of us, and if I'm not mistaken, was the original project 55? And then when it came to be modified, it was raised to 60 for a specific reason? Am I off on that, or how does that work?
I think that was about right when I was looking at the minutes. So that's correct. They had originally come in at 55 years of age, and I believe it was because there was only 98 parking spaces at that time, that I believe that was one of the reasons they actually wanted to raise it to age 60. However, age 60, I don't know where that
It's the new 40.
came from. But yeah.
That was a condition of approval added by the city council at the time when it went to them during the public hearing. The council made a motion, there was a council member that made a motion to increase the age, and then that's how it followed through.
But was it tied to the parking? Or I thought it was because of not just the circulation, but how much more it would add to Buena Vista. I can't recall exactly what it was, but I do remember there was a good reason for keeping or making it 60. That was my recollection. I'm not sure that the parking increase for the project by the current applicant is the offset for the age difference, actually. But maybe I'm anxious to hear from the applicant. I do want to ask him about that. So thank you, Chair.
So I have a couple of questions for staff still, and then maybe we'll get to the public hearing if everyone else has asked their questions. The street widening, I'm curious about that because I believe in the staff report it said widening of the street would not be happening anytime soon. That would be sort of, I guess, up to the city in the future.
I can make a comment on that. The 4-foot widening was required with the previous project, and that applicant did complete the widening. So at this time, this applicant does not need to widen. The half-width street width is 34 feet, and that's currently what they have.
But I'm talking about the street overall, it needs to be widened, right? Is that what the staff report said?
I was just making a correction about
As a collector street or
the
something?
presentation, but yes, there will be a request for funds to be provided for an additional widening on Buena Vista in the future.
And is that because there's the right-of-way to allow that expansion?
There is not the right-of-way to allow maybe a full expansion at this time, but in the future, the plan would be to widen the street. I'm not sure if we have all the right-of-way.
Is that due to the single-family homes that are adjacent to this project? Is that because of the?
That's correct.
Yeah, so what Rocio was explaining, if we can go back to the site plan, the road will be widening where you have the entry gate. That is going to be widened. You can see it right now in the exhibit. It kind of meanders out. So that meandering will continue where this frontage is, but then you have the two single-family homes, which are not going to be widened. And then we have the driveway where the house is going to be demolished. So we have to reserve doing the widening on that piece because of the fact that you have single-family homes in between that. But they are going to widen it where the main entrance into the project is.
Okay, so yeah, right, I saw that the south entrance, the south driveway would be widened with the project, but the remainder of Buena Vista up to Railroad, that would be for a future date.
That's correct, because those are held by other property owners.
Could I ask a clarifying question on that? So is it only the two homes that sit between the north and south driveway that don't have the, that right-of-way area? Or are there more homes north of the project that are also a right-of-way issue?
The homes that are in between the two driveways have, we are missing right-of-way there, and there is also missing right-of-way further to the north.
To the north?
Yes.
And in order to, so the right-of-way would be that the city would then have to go in and purchase that right-of-way from those homeowners if they intended, if we intended to widen the street, is that?
That's a possibility, yes.
And that's the only thing that would keep that from being widened then, would be the fact that the city doesn't own that land?
No, the city may be able to come up with a project to widen the curb with the existing right-of-way, but we have not looked at that design. We haven't really evaluated that.
And then one other question I had was relating, there was a very small detail relating to enclosed storage at the complex. Does that entail? Are those like closets, storage closets that are part of the plan? I was trying to zoom in on the the detailed site plan, but.
It's typically enclosed storage either at the carports, the garages, or within the private patio areas.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff, clarifying questions?
I do, actually. When you're showing the landscaping and you've got, I can appreciate how the building is 50 feet from the 4 parcels up front, the single family. And in order to buffer them from this project, the cypress trees are going in. Is there any way to put more than 24-inch boxes just for the adjacent part so that there could be immediate? I mean, a 24-inch box, that cypress is only thin and 4 feet and maybe 5 feet at the most. So when you were showing those projections for the tall cypress, takes many years, maybe decades to get that. So maybe those could be a bigger box, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you. I had the same question because it talks about the maximum height when at the maturity of the plant, but it seems that that would not be for quite some time.
Yes, we could certainly work with the applicant and speak with our landscape consultant. Possibly a 36-inch box tree might work there.
Just to give it a boost, that'd be great. Thank you. And by the way, a great staff report. It really translated for those of us who saw the project first and then got the modification for the CUP. We're excited for the new owner to come in and do something different on this scale, split the one building apart. So very well translated. Thank you, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you.
Okay, well then, with this, we will open the public hearing. Ms. Capilla, do we have any speaker cards or written comments from the public on this item?
We do have the video from the applicant, and we have a speaker card from Mr. Morgan.
All right, let's play the video first, and then we will have Mr. Morgan come to the podium. Okay, I guess with that, then we will proceed to our speaker card.
Joe Morgan, 2063 Ren. I'll note with no small sense of irony that there was no adjoining housing or no neighbors depicted in the pretty video. Right from the beginning, this project basically just craps on the neighborhood. There was plenty of people here when this originally passed under the previous planning commission, and it was very contentious. That 60-year thing was a hard-fought compromise that was supposed to reduce the traffic and reduce the impact on the neighborhood, and it's really dirty to then go and slide that back out. Also, the more condensed kind of massing in the middle was intended to soften the impact on the surrounding housing. So all the neighbors were all there. And I should add that this initial project, right from the beginning, was kind of a low rent, you get it entitled and flip it kind of a thing. Try to do it on the down low, try to do it on a budget. They lied about outreach. They were handing English language forms to Spanish only speakers to get things signed off. It was really exceptionally shady. They're wrapping two houses. You know, they couldn't be bothered to just buy those houses. If you want to do something big, you want to do something dramatic, buy the other two lots. Do something really nice and do the whole thing and do it the right way. But it was never done that way because they never really had the money to do it. This was never really done right. And then now you have a plan that's going to be even more impactful on the neighbors. You're spreading it out and making it bigger. It's going to be right up against the other housing. And acting like the landscape screening is a new thing. There was already landscape screening in the previous plan that was much, much, much talked about. And the dropping it down 6 feet, all you had to drive through my neighborhood and look at Kellogg. Tell me how much more appropriate it makes Kaiser look against my neighborhood. So that's a joke. This thing is going to be stomping on the whole neighborhood, and now you've got a bigger building even closer to existing housing. I noticed none of the renderings show just exactly what it's going to look like from the adjoining housing. There's none of that because this whole project has never really been about accommodating the neighborhood. It's about doing what you need to do to get by and get it through the project. But it shouldn't be changed unless it's to incorporate the other houses so that you can have a cohesive project that you can be proud of in the long term, that nobody's going to look at and laugh in 10 or 20 years. And the zone was changed for this. It was general plan at some point for R3, but the zone was changed for this project. So to say, well, it's zoned R3, it was zoned R3 as part of this project. There was a zone change. So, so let's see. So, already had preliminary landscape. Yeah, the 55 definitely should not change. And you mentioned the parking because they did the senior thing. It's kind of a wink to get the reduced parking. It's not really about seniors. It's about maximizing the amount of use. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's our only speaker card, correct, Ms. Capilla?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, and then the applicant is here tonight, I believe. Yeah, we'd love to hear from the applicant if he so chooses. Will you please tell us your name first, sir?
Good evening. My name is Milad Dawajian. I'm the architect of the project and the applicant on behalf of the owner. Let me start first by thanking Rocio. She did a great job. She missed a couple things, and I'm going to try to add them, but she really did a great job. Part of the amenities that she missed, we have an indoor gym with the sauna. The entire project respond to an ADA question. We have a total of 5 elevators throughout the project, and the entire project, 100% of all the unit, they are 100% ADA designed. Even though the building code that doesn't require us to provide all the unit as an ADA, 100% of all our unit is ADA designed, and the entire project, all the accesses everywhere, it's ADA. So this is as far as the ADA requirement. Now, also, part of the project, we have a provision, as is right now at the beginning, to provide I believe like 13 electric charger with the potential to convert the entire project to with the electric charger too. Another part too, as far as the request for the age restriction, we conducted a survey throughout the city of Corona, and we did include the survey as part of our request. And I believe, Rocio, you had it included as one of the exhibit. And as part of that research, we did include not only demographic studies about Corona, we did also survey the similar project throughout the Corona with their age restriction. And we found out that we are the only project with the age restriction of 60. And by the way, the first, that age restriction was we were not involved. The new owner, I don't think that extension and even the age restriction was part. I think it was part of the original approval, but nothing, there was no discussion about this one or age change until now. This is to my recollection, or at least from the time I got involved with this project. And I really strongly suggest that you look at the comparison and the names of the project throughout the city of Corona and see how many there is by name and addresses, and see the age restriction, which is the 55. And as far as buying the houses in the middle, we tried, but we failed. Now, is there a will to acquire them? Yeah, for the right price. But at this time, unfortunately, there was no right price agreed. But did we try to acquire those two properties in the middle? Yeah, we tried. And I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Kojian.
It's actually,
yes, please correct me.
it's Awasian.
Awasian.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not Q, it's O.
Okay, I misread that.
No.
Okay, thank
Believe me,
you.
you're not the first one, so don't worry.
So you kind of referenced the other properties and that you tried to acquire them, but yeah, I spoke with one of the residents there, and they said they've not been contacted since the change in ownership. They said they were they were in discussions with the previous owner. I think that was Mr. Nairi, but they said they had not had any contact with after the change in ownership.
I will leave this to the owner to actually answer you, but to my understanding, one of the homes, the ownership was changed since then. So I'm not sure if you're referring to the house that was recently purchased or the house that did not change ownership. So I'm not really, but I will let the owner actually answer your question.
Sure, yeah, if he wants to, that's fine.
Sorry, there was a discussion about the parking. And actually, as we mentioned before, we do provide extra parking, more than what is a minimum required. And also, those 4 parkings, they are not meant to be used by visitors. We're talking about those 3 or 4 parkings outside the gates. They are not for for visitors of the units. They are strictly reserved for the management office and for the people who are coming to acquire. Now, as a visitor, you have enough spaces inside and you have reserved parking inside the project.
I have a question regarding the revision itself. So the original CUP was approved for 62 units, roughly the same square footage, give or take roughly the same amount of parking. Why the reapplication for now going to 2 buildings plus a bungalow, and in a sense, a complete redesign of the project in the first place? I want to better understand that motivation.
If you really look or review the original approved design, I cannot talk about the old design, but all what I can tell you that entire the project design was morely geared into assistant living more than like an active live senior, you know, because the way how that project was designed, one building, one big hall in between, 3 floors, you know, and everything is like within that building. The intent is, okay, let's try to create a more user-friendly space where to encourage people to actually be more active, and that's one of the reasons that we kind of like elected to switch the design. Also, in the previous design, if you also compare the project, all the actual amenities and the outdoor activities were right against those 2 homes in the middle. So they were like close, and we kind of like figured, it's like, oh, what about if there is an activity there or gathering there? Those people, if you have like 10, 15 people, they will create enough noise or enough nuisance to the neighbor. So we tried to push everything within the inside of the project and keep them away from the neighboring property as much as we can.
Okay. And the rationale on the bungalow, now understanding that it reduces your ability or actually reduces the setback, why the bungalow?
Yes, actually, in order for us to at least, as Rocio mentioned, per right, the density allows us to go up to 75, but to stay within the approved project previously, which is the 62, we tried our best to match at least that number. And because of the restriction of that 50 feet setback from this side, and from the other side, we were like left with the option is like, okay, you know what? If we can add those 5 units as a bungalow and 1 story, that would be the answer, at least to meet that number.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a question for staff here. Just to stay up to date on the process. So this is there's a new project, you know, significantly changed from the previous one, but this is just for the CUP, right? Do we as a commission need to approve the plan, I guess, separately, or how does that work? Is it all contained within the CUP?
This is a modification to the originally approved conditional use permit. So essentially, you're approving a modification to the originally approved design.
Okay, so this would be the only time that we would be looking at this, and then if the CUP is approved by this body, then the council would review that potentially as well. Okay.
Correct.
So what I will say is, you know, the concerns about the traffic, and I will say, actually, first of all, I think there are some really positive changes to this plan, some pretty good improvements. There are some things that I don't think are better, but there are some really nice changes and improvements versus the previous plan. I think, you know, the concerns about traffic and Buena Vista Street are serious, and I think, you know, the major flaw of the previous plan and of this one involves the 2 or even the 4 houses that are the neighbors along Buena Vista Street. And of course, this plan does nothing to address that. So for me, the second finding in the CUP, I'm having trouble getting to that point yet, because Let me see exactly how it's worded. So, but that's just kind of my comments here at the moment. But yeah, does anyone else have questions for the applicant? I don't know if the owner wanted to address the commission too. That's up to the owner.
I want to go back on the age piece because because I'm more than 55, I'm confused. So we started out with this being 55, then when it went through city council, it was raised to 60. And now the request is to reduce it back to 55. And by code, there really is no benefit to the approval. It doesn't change the design or any of those factors. The only thing it does is open these units up to a 55-year-old person compared to a 60. It just broadens their ability to lease. Is that correct? Is that the only reason for the distinction?
Yes. Yes.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I still don't know that I'm clear on the answer that was given to you regarding what was the push for modifying the COP. Was it strictly the age? What pushed it over the threshold where it had to come back? Because we knew the building, when it came before us for modification, we knew it was going from one building to two, and now there's bungalows. That wouldn't have modified it, though. What, right? What's the?
So the design, although the intent of the CUP to establish senior housing is the same, it really came down to the site plan and the presentation that the original approval from 2017 had dramatically changed. The planning director has the authority to kind of go in there and do things that are pretty, that are not significant, like it wouldn't be noticeable, but this change was enough for us to want to bring it back and make sure we had that discussion, because what was on record during the public process was the single unit building and then, the less parking. So this was enough of a change that we felt it warranted a modification.
And so then to further clarify that, Ms. Coletta, thank you. So listening to the applicant, it is substantial to say that this is going from a assisted living facility in a single building to basically very nice apartments, senior apartments.
Yeah.
And so I think that was probably a miss in that could be a single major factor in the change of the use.
So it was never assisted living. What the architect was saying was that design was more conducive to assisted living. So it's
Okay.
not as attractive to an active living senior.
Right.
Where they would prefer maybe to have an exterior door versus having to go in through a common hallway, which he was saying was more conducive to assisted living, which does have a different feel.
Yes.
So this redesign makes it look more like just regular living, even though there's an age restriction and you have your own independent entrance.
Thank you.
To each
Yeah.
unit.
That's much more clarity. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ujian, then if I don't know we have any more questions for you. If the owner wants to address us, we will let him. But if he doesn't, then we will move to close public hearing. So.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like we will then move to close the public hearing, and we'll continue the discussion here on the dais.
I have, I think it's a very creative use. I think the new design is much more conducive to quality life and living versus a big monolithic building. So I think the applicant has been very creative with providing livable, a nice property. I do have three things that just kind of I'm not confused about, that just I'm concerned about. The change of the 55 to 60 and the bouncing back and forth of that, I'm not happy with that. Frankly, I'm not happy that we've had one approval, 2 extensions, and now this change, and we still don't have a project that's built. And so I'm not comfortable just continuing to approve and this comes back in 2 years as an extension, another extension, I think we need to remedy that in some way. And I'm kind of hung up on the two houses and the street. If the project is, understandably, they're going to upgrade the immediate street in front of the driveways, but one of them will not be because the two houses between are still stuck in this right-of-way zone. And I know personally I've been involved in other projects outside of the city where the city would stipulate that the developer improve the street in order to better, for the overall betterment of the street. And I'm wondering why and if that could not be a stipulation of condition of approval that the applicant upgrade the street that they're impacting on both sides of it. So I guess those are the three things I wanted to have a discussion on and understand better.
Yeah, I too am concerned about the age change, because I do think, Mr. Morgan spoke to that, and that was my recollection, that was the council trying to reduce the impact on the neighborhood. And, with the additional cars and the additional residents and the traffic, because Buena Vista is a pretty dangerous street. It's pretty narrow there. There's on-street parking on one side, and then that leaves the rest of the street pretty tight. And so I think as I was alluding to, that the project will be potentially detrimental to public safety there for the neighbors, for the residents, with the street as is. So that's one of my big struggles with this project. As I said, I like some of the changes. I think it's very creative. The bungalows are an interesting addition. It looks like it would be a very nice community. The fact that it is market rate also doesn't seem like that supports that part of the balance of housing types and affordability. That's one of the goals and one of the findings of the CUP as well. So that's another area that I'm not quite there to where I think I can get behind this. But the safety in those two houses, because I spoke to the residents in one of the houses, and they said they've not been approached by the new owner. So they were in discussions for quite a while with the original owner of this property, who had the original plan, but then have not been contacted now it's been about 4 years since the second owner has taken over. Or if there were discussions previous to COVID, it's still been another 3 years that they've not reached back out to those residents. And in fact, I was told that the other of the two homes in the middle had been acquired by the previous owner and then has since been sold to somebody else. So they had kind of written off acquiring the last home and written off even continuing to try on that. And so they sold the other home to somebody else who, I guess, purchased it knowing they'll live potentially in this project. Hopefully that was all revealed to them. But yeah, the plan itself, as I mentioned, I think the big drawback of the other houses is significant, and that's kind of all I have to say at this point.
Yes, I'd like to state, or just say I agree with what both of you are saying. I don't think that this is a project that is being neighborly at all to the community. I think that the city, we should come back, the city council should go back with the new owners and work out widening the street. I would not want to see that there at all. It was saddening to me that I feel the community is being pushed in the wrong direction, just taken advantage of to build around two houses. Perhaps before coming, I kind of expected, I wanted to say that I think a different design might have been more to my pleasing. It's like, it's a bold statement to say, I'm going to go around you if you don't move. And then to expect that for safety, children, families, there are still families there with small children, and there's not enough parking on the inside for these young 40-year-old seniors who are going to have many guests. Everything that's inside would just make me want to invite my friends to come. So I'm not with the project as it's proposed, and I am new here, so I didn't see what came before, and I don't know how it even, came about or got to this point, but I'm still not comfortable with it as it is. I think the street widening is absolutely necessary. If the like in Norco, if the farmers didn't want to move, they built the big developments around them. And this is what it's looking like for those two houses, but we still have to widen the street and make it safe for the public. I parked there today to walk, and while at the time that I did, it wasn't much traffic, it's still too much traffic. It's going to increase it considerably.
Ms. Coletta, I know I made my comments, Ms. Aona, I'm sure you want to go, but Ms. Coletta, a question for you. Since we already have a CUP that's been approved in the single building with 62 units in the existing site plan, the developer has the right to move forward with that, with the original application. So that doesn't solve, and in doing so, that would not solve the concerns that we've cited, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
They can build what was already entitled, but
Which already has the similar concerns that we have, so it
that
almost,
doesn't mean we can't take some of these comments back to the applicant and talk to them about it. Asking, we can check to see if the right-of-way dedication exists. It's not a matter of can we go and do it. I believe what staff is saying for those two single-family homes, has the right-of-way been dedicated by them for that? And that's something we need to go back and take a look at. We can get verification on that in terms of that.
I mean, because really, I think, even though the issues exist, this certainly is a better development, in my opinion, a much better development than is attached to the original CUP. That said, I do have those concerns, and I think they remain, so.
It's a beautiful development. I don't know how affordable it is for that community, but we've put up others, and people are, struggling to stay at capacity. I think the city should work with the owner to do something for the community.
I understand what you're saying about the homes. It's always been a contention from the first point that when the project was brought forward, not this applicant, but the other one. And is it unfortunate that those homes are there? Yes. I did knock on the doors, and the one was a new owner, understanding that this project was coming, and he bought it anyway, so he was fine with it. The other owner it's a generational family. And even though the older original purchasers were going to turn it over to the younger parts of the family, it was her opinion that she wouldn't be moving either. That's her home. That's her mom's home. That was her grandmother's home. And they were staying. So basically, no offer would be enough to convince her to move. So that resonated with me. I'm a hard no on the age. I'm gonna say I like it at 60, and the reason is that at 60, it's only 5 years difference, but those 5 years changes are happening, and not to say 60 is the threshold for overly old. It's still a very active age, but at 55, those 2 bedrooms might have 2 vehicles instead of 1. I understand the parking is over, and I appreciate the improvements over the last project. I really appreciate the new owner coming in with this project. I'm okay with the bungalows. I think it is an interesting concept to it, and it being 1 story. The video really helped me put it in perspective of how all those amenities come to play as you're driving around and looking at the underground parking versus the uncovered parking. I think as you look at the staff report, how they balance out Building A and Building B, I was happy with that combination of 1 and 2 bedrooms. The square footage, I think it is the right size for senior living. I can appreciate the backdrop on the 50 feet, but I definitely want to see that barrier with older, more mature cypress trees. When you are catering to the more active lifestyle, I think you do have more circulation impact to that egress and ingress on that south driveway. I think the gate should be taller. I think it should be a tall gate because there is transient population in that area. And the trash enclosures are open once you get beyond the gate. So I'm not happy with that. I think that could be improved. But as far as changing the architecture, that's staff. I'm okay with staff's recommendation. I'm glad to see that traffic, all the departments had their view on it as far as the circulation goes. I like the idea of this center atrium. I like the openness, the amenities. I don't know, that mini golf course with the water, I'm sorry, that's just frustration waiting to happen. I couldn't do that, but anyway. The other point would be, I would suggest to the applicant to, we live in a community where we have hot heat up to 8 months out of the year. I think there could be more shade. I think in the patios, those should be solid instead of just slats of wood. And as far as being a good neighbor, I understand that this project they're entitled to build it. I think to tweak it, to make it the best they could. They get 62 units. They get 3-story buildings and 2 buildings, and they split it, and it's a good fit. So those are my comments, Chair.
Okay. Well, we've heard from all 4 commissioners who are here tonight, and it seems like if I'm reading, understanding the comments correctly, that at least 3 of us are not enthusiastic about the plan, and so I don't know.
I think you
I
could
would
not.
characterize, there's components of the plan that I really like. I think they're a great improvement over the original CUP.
Right.
And I've stated, I think there's some concerns that I have. My hope would be that maybe those concerns could be addressed by staff and the applicant. And then maybe we can review it at a point that those are addressed, or maybe they can be solved here. I don't.
Well, I didn't address, I'm sorry, your comment, Commissioner, about the improvement to the road. Projects that do come forward, they are required to improve the roads in the area of which their project will impact. It will impact Buena Vista. Tight road, small, it's older. Yes, they're going to explore the right-of-ways. That's great. But to condition the project to improve Buena Vista, I would support that. What that looks like, I'm not sure, but that would be something. I mean, are we talking about let's put our conditions in and then continue it so we can see what it looks like? Or what are we talking about?
I like that idea.
I would think it sounds like we would need to go back to staff with this.
I mean, I'd be open to recommendation from Ms. Coletta and staff. I mean, if these are conditioned items that we could offer now, or is it best to state these as concerns and ask that the application come back before us with those items?
And that goes towards your concern about it's been continued. When is it going to start?
Well, when I mean continued, I'm sorry, I didn't mean continued by.
Extended.
An
excuse me,
extension is
extension.
different than being continued.
Sorry about that.
I just, yeah.
And actually, one question about the timeline that I meant to ask and didn't was it said this revised CUP was submitted to the city, I believe it said March of 2021, but now maybe it didn't go through the whole process, that maybe they've been making revisions for the last 2 years or so. Is that fair to characterize the process?
Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner Woody. So in 2021, the applicant did submit the modification, and that is correct. That was in May 2021. However, due to still the COVID pandemic and so forth, and I believe due to financing, the applicant had applied for an extension of time last year, and they did get approval by the Planning Commission through May 2 or May 2nd, 2024.
Yeah, we did that in 2020.
I guess, yeah, I was just wondering what delayed the CUP application from the city receiving it in March of 21 to, taking that long to come before us. Was that due to the applicant making changes, or is that due to some other factor? What's the usual length of time it takes for a CUP to start to finish?
Typically, if there's not, if first go around of comments go out to the applicant modifies the plan, they come back in, they've addressed staff's comments. It's typical to maybe have a CUP come before the Planning Commission 6 to 8 months typically. Depending on if it's exempt from CEQA, it could be quicker than that. If it's subject to CEQA, then that's typical in terms of timing.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the context, sir. Well, Ms. Coletta, do you have any advice for us
So,
on how to?
I want to make sure I understand this. So when we talk about the Buena Vista, when we say widening, are we talking about the area in front of the project and also the two homes that are adjacent to it? Because the applicant is not responsible for widening the entire street. That is something legally we cannot require them to do. So they are only responsible for their project frontage. However, you have two options here. We can add a condition that says staff goes back and evaluates whether the dedication exists on those two adjoining properties, the two single-family homes. And if the dedication does exist, meaning we don't have to go to those two property owners to get it, then maybe we can work with the applicant on actually widening that section, which would get us to be wider. Or you can make us go back and do a little bit more work on that and come back and report on our findings. So it's either way. It is up to this commission if they want to make the discretion on the age restriction. Just like it was conditioned before, you can make a recommendation to condition the age restriction that you see fit if you like the previous condition of approval. So we can definitely do that, but in terms of the widening, we can look at that. We could see if the two homes there do have the dedication provided to us. Chris, I don't know if we know that now or not. Do we know that now?
I'm looking at our GIS, and one of the homes is showing that it's not dedicated 4 feet.
Okay, so that's something we can go back and look at an alternative design or maybe contact that owner, but we do have to get the dedication from them since it's adjacent to their frontage in order before we can do any construction to widen it in that area.
So if we were to add conditions and move forward with this, we're pretty much not able to address the street concern at this point because the city would need to contact the owner at a minimum. Right.
Where we don't have the dedication, but we have, is it the house that is adjacent to the southerly driveway or is it the one that's adjacent to the northerly driveway?
It's adjacent to the southerly driveway.
Oh, so that would actually give us,
A little bit more.
yeah, that would give you a little bit more. That would give you a little bit more because it's right there adjacent to the main driveway.
Sorry, that house is not dedicated, just to be clear.
That what?
The house adjacent to the southerly driveway is not dedicated.
Oh, not dedicated, it's the one to the north of that.
Yes.
Oh, I misunderstood. And what's that time period to reach out and obtain, if possible, a dedication? Just a ballpark.
It could take 2 to 3 months.
I mean, for me, a permit review process would be farther longer than that. So I'd be amenable to a condition on that and direction to staff under a condition that says to resolve it. I mean, we're already stipulating that the developer make the improvement, correct? So now it's a matter of just getting that improvement done. And if that can be in condition, I think we've pretty much all stated the age piece is a condition, and even looking at the applicant's letter, there's even a concession in the letter that says, well, we'd be happy to keep it at 60. So from my point, I guess I think these items could be conditioned if the commission is open to that.
I'd second a move on that to condition the way you stated it, for the age to remain at 60.
Okay.
For the staff to look into the acquiring the dedication. Basically, it's just pushing it down the road further north on Buena Vista, but for the activity of the project, it'll be helpful.
Sure. What of the concerns about a continued renewal of the CUP itself? Do we have any standing with city laws and attorney that allow us to stipulate that there could not be more than X number of extensions? Or?
Only, so if they do not get some type of activity or a permit pulled within the 2 years and they come before this body, at that time, it's a discretionary review. It's a discretionary request. So this commission can deny the request.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
maybe that's a recommendation in the approval that says that the commission, whoever it may be, at that point in time, seriously review, previous findings.
I think the owner is hearing you loud and clear, so.
So my other concern, though, about this, the effect it'll have on public safety there and the neighbors, it still remains. Because I think it will be, the project will be detrimental to the public safety and is not necessarily compatible with the existing uses and doesn't really do anything to, support the housing goals of the housing element. So,
Yeah, I understand that too, but what I struggle with is the CUP that's before us has already been approved. It's asking for an amendment. And if we didn't accept the amendment, they could revert back to the original CUP and they would still have a 62-unit property with 50.
and I hear what you're saying, but
So
but
at least we
no one
can
on this
guide.
commission was involved with the original CUP, and had they, based on what we're all saying tonight, it sounds like that would have struggled to gain a lot of traction with this commission, and we can't necessarily undo that. And I think if they still have the option to give us a better application, or build their currently approved application, which they've clearly chosen that they don't want to do. So, I think we have a chance to push this in a better direction, rather than just saying, well, somebody else, approved a lousy plan in the past and we have to be stuck with it. So.
Yeah, I agree. I am all for giving them as many extensions as they need, but I want it to be safe and sound for the neighbors. I have more of a problem with us letting it get through without the widening to start, the whole street, let alone those two lots. Yes, sir.
And I guess my feeling is what's before us today is the CUP of the modification. It's already been approved. They have entitlement to build 62 units. The splitting of the one building into two I think lends itself to a better project. So what has been presented is an improvement. I think the amenities are the best of a situation that's already been approved. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I'd just like us to go back and look at the street widening. The building and the project itself is not, I have no problem with that. Something's going to come there anyway. I just want it for the neighbors, for the neighborhood to look different and the access to be far better.
So I guess at this point, we either need a motion to approve, a motion to deny, a motion to table.
I'll put a motion forward for the commission to accept or not. A motion for approval with the following conditions of approval. One would be that the city evaluate the street widening opportunity and validate dedications and determine viability of acquiring necessary property to complete the street widening, which would be done by this developer. That would be number one. Number two condition would be that the property remain a 60-year-old plus property and not the 55. And I guess I'll drop the extension piece. So those would be the two conditions that I would add as a motion of approval.
Well,
I heard increasing landscaping.
Yeah,
at
the condition of the
size.
increased boxes, so there's
Okay,
more
but
of a wall for
I'll
the
add
cypress trees,
the
the buffer, the residents.
addressing of the landscaping, as well as I think there was a comment about the trash enclosure and some other,
Higher gate for security, I think is important for a senior complex. And with that, with those conditions, I'll go ahead and second it.
so yeah, I was going to say I will not be seconding. I still can't support it, for the reasons I laid out for the public safety reasons. So, but we do have a second from Commissioner Alexander. And so at this point, we will vote whether to approve the modification with the conditions that were added to the motion. Yeah, we'll vote. Okay, motion fails 2-2. So what would be the next step with this, Ms. Coletta?
So what happens from here, the CMC provision is if the Planning Commission cannot make a decision within 35 days from this public hearing, the applicant then does have the right to appeal to the City Council. So this is where we are at, and we will talk with them about how they would like to proceed forward from this point.
Okay, very good. So at that point, we were now written communications, and so I'm going to ask Ms. Capia if we've received any written communications from persons providing information or seeking action from the commission.
No, Chair, we have not.
All right, and do we have any administrative reports from Ms. Coletta?
No reports?
All right. And then Planning and Housing Commissioner comments and reports. I will make a few comments first. I know we will likely have a new commissioner with us at our next meeting, so that's exciting for all of us. I also want to thank Ms. Coletta for the update she provided to the commission regarding the Miguel's sign. So we appreciate you following up on that, and it was very informative for us to understand that. Any other commissioners wish to make comments?
No.
All right. Then we have one future agenda item, I guess, a variance V 2023-0001. That will be at our next meeting, October 9th. And that is allowing the increase of a block wall on a front yard setback on Gilbert Avenue, or Romans Road. Okay, so we'll hear all about that at the next meeting. So with that, our meeting tonight is adjourned.